I go to federal court in San Diego, walk into the courtroom. The representatives from Rutherford Insurance are there, the attorney's there, and I lose. I was in and out of that courtroom in 3 hours, and the lawyer for the other side barely said a word. And it's like they knew. I'm just sitting across, just eyeballing them, just like, you sleazy motherfucker. It's like, how could you do this? And the judge was right there on my side, but she had to look at me and say, I'm sorry, Mr. Lake. Like, this is an act of Congress. Like, they're acting well within their legal means. And then she proceeded to chew them out for doing the wrong thing. Like, you guys could do the right thing here. You guys could do the right thing, and you're choosing not to. And she's like, yes, I have to side with you on this dispute, but look into your, like, it was like a personal attack on their character for what they were allowing to happen. And they were just being insurance companies, man. They do it every fucking day of the week.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's that adage, there's what's right, what's wrong, and then what's legal.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they did what's legal
and
what's wrong at the same time. They found a way to fucking blend them. And I was absolutely infuriated, but I took my swing at the government, and I lost. And it was around that time that, like, there was a couple of things that were now at play. Like, the Glenn's Foundation was up and running. The GDMF was up and running. And by the way, we absolutely love that acronym. Like, of course, Glenn, you like, this is a classic Glennism. You got to leave us with that. The Glen Doherty Memorial Foundation, the GDMF. Goddamn motherfucker. Yeah. And to this day, I love wearing those hats around that just say GDMF, and people be like,
like, what? Why would you?
Oh, I don't want to talk to that guy. So I take my swing and I lose, and I'm angry. Like, I'm in the grief cycle of anger now. I've now learned a little bit about what happened that night. I've been to Washington, D.C. For a ceremony where, like, Joe Biden and John Kerry were up and talking about, you know, like, what had happened. Dave Ubben, who's one of the survivors on the rooftop with Glenn, was there. I got to meet him, and he was still in a wheelchair, and was like, you could tell he was healing, but had been super fucked up. And that was like my first real visual of what had happened. And, you know, it was like Joe Biden shaking hands with Barbara Doherty and finally giving the thank you and appreciation. But I had a fight that I wasn't done fighting for. So there was two parts to it for me initially. Was Glenn's death benefit. And then the other part of it was I felt was so fucked up. I was like, well, what's going to happen the next time this happens, man? Like, I had friends, you have friends that, you know, that still were in that line of work. And there's way more coming through that are going to do this again. Like, Glenn ain't the only SEAL, the only special operator who is going to need to make that kind of money serving his country overseas, doing high danger, high speed work that's going to be put in a really harmful situation. Like, it's going to happen again. What happens to them? Yeah. And I wanted to future-proof this. So I kind of had this strategy that I concocted with the attorneys, which was like, hey, I want to get Glenn's death benefit paid. That's job number one. Job number two is I want to future-proof this. I want to protect Glenn's brothers because they're my brothers. Like, in my own way, like, these are my friends. If Shane Hyatt deploys overseas and decides to go and do contracting work and he dies, this same thing happens to him.
Yeah.
I want that money to be there and go to his brother, go to his mom, like she was alive at the time, like whatever. I don't care. Like, it's got to go somewhere and do something for good.
Yeah.
Just show the appreciation that someone laid down their life. So that was my kind of attack plan. They entered a third component into it, which was part of, like, was connected back to GDMF, which was like, well, we should also think about celebrating Glenn's legacy. And it was on, you know, a different timeline where they talked about this thing called the Congressional Gold Medal. And all of a sudden, like, this 3-part strategy was in play. And this is like late 2014. I'd lost the lawsuit, but my next fight was to take it directly to the CIA. I was asking to get a meeting with John Brennan, the director of the CIA. It took about half a year after the lawsuit to get that meeting. And at this point, I'm going after both things. And I remember going in to the base level of the Central Intelligence Agency. You walk in the building, you take a left and a left and a left and a right or whatever. And this is one little, like, shitty corner on the first floor of the CIA building, which is where GRS operates. So I got to see where Glenn's desk was. Like, they all shared desks back there. And it was like, I got to meet a couple of the guys that Glenn had deployed with. I was like, man, they really put you guys in the fucking broom closet around here.
Office space. Fucking.
Oh yeah, it was full office space. So I go into a contract room and like I wanted to read Glen's contract. Like I had versions of it from his laptop, but like the real thing he couldn't take home with him. It was all classified. And I'm looking for the language that covers the life insurance policy. And I walk into this room and just like the sheets of paper on there, take that sheet of paper, take a black Sharpie and fucking wipe out 95% of the words on there. That's what they handed me. Glen Doherty, signature. Like I could glean nothing from it. And I was so fucking mad. And they're like, we'll leave you in here as long as it takes to review this.
You're like, yeah, I got it.
Yeah, I got it, guys. Like, thanks.
Yeah.
Like this is the fuck you government people. Like you've already, you won the lawsuit in court. All I'm trying to do is help the people in that broom closet back there get what's right for them and help Glen's mom who's at home pissed off and crying get a little nod of appreciation for the sacrifice here. And you're giving me redacted statements. Cool. So then I go upstairs to John Brennan's office. I actually got a meeting with the director of the CIA. So here I am. My palms are fucking sweating, but I am just mad. Like that whole redacted thing just kind of set me off. And I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about patience. Well, this is maybe when that didn't work in my favor or did, depending on how you look at it. I walk in the room and there's a circle round table in Brennan's office. And like, we're talking 6 lawyers and Kate, Glen's little sister and me are in there. And then, a lawyer on our side and like 4 lawyers on their side. And I have this conversation with them and it starts off very light. Like, oh, tell me about Glen. And I'm like, yeah, he was the most important man in the world. Like he is the reason that people should be fighting for what's right. And he would do that. So, we spiral into like, well, talk about the reason you're here today, son, or, whatever the fuck he says. And I say, well, your company is disrespecting Glen's memory. And don't tell me you don't have $500,000 sitting in a suitcase somewhere where you can't reach over there and go and do the right thing. I said, I'm here to ask you to do the right thing. And I mean, again, I was pretty fucking fired up. Like, and if you don't do the right thing, think of how it's going to look when I'm out there talking to every media news outlet that's out there talking about how you don't honor those who've laid down their lives serving their country. Those are not light words to say to the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. I get a kick under the table from Kate, like, knock it the fuck off. And that was it. I took my shot. And there were more words exchanged. They weren't pleasant.
How did he respond? Like
stoically. So he's famous for that. Like, I don't know this, right? I know John Brennan's name from fucking Fox News, CNN, ABC News, like whatever. Like that's all I know. He's the director of the CIA. He's Glen's boss. He didn't know Glen. Glen didn't know him. Like he was just that guy. So he said one thing to me that really pissed me off at the time. But this is me not knowing politics or anything. He says, we'll look into it. It was among the only words that he said. We'll look into it. And in my head, I'm thinking, we'll look into it? Yeah. Is that what we're going to fucking do? Are we going to look into it? Like, I was so mad. And he gets up to leave. I'm shaking. My hands are sweating. And, I wasn't being rude. I was being direct. But he gets up and leaves the room. And I'm just like, as soon as it was just me, Kate, and the attorney, I remember being like, what the fuck just happened? Like, what is going on around here? And Amy Carnival, the attorney for K&L Gates, says that was a really good thing. I'm like, what was good about that? She's like, no, you don't understand. She's like, I've been in the room with John Brennan before. Most of the time he doesn't say anything. Nothing. He asked you a question. You gave your full pitch and he said, we'll look into it. That means something. And I'm like, I got to take your word for it. Like, you're the pro, I'm not. That felt very different to me, but I don't know politics. I don't know this world. Like I don't come from this. So, okay. I studied it in college, but it was nothing like what I'm experiencing now. And we all left there. And that was really when like, we just didn't know what could happen. Cause I pitched Brennan too on future proofing it. I was like, hey man, like you don't just pay Glen's death benefit. You got to take care of Glen's brothers moving forward. Like you have to acknowledge that this is wrong. you got to tell these guys to fix it. And I architected this whole idea of what fixing it meant. Like, you got to have them sign an extra piece of paper that acknowledges that this life insurance policy will never pay out and they should go and get supplemental life insurance. Like, I laid all that at Brennan's feet.
I mean, why not just change
an act of Congress?
Yeah, I mean, why not just say, hey, it includes anybody. There are no stipulations. Like, why not just do that?
Let me just reference the book here real quick for that. Hold on a second. Chapter 14, Changing the Congressional Act of Congress.